Alright, everybody, so we're back with Super Space Sheriff Gavan Infinity and episodes 11 to 15. So yeah, do you like how I'm doing these in chunks of 5 episodes? So yeah. So, on to episode 11, I guess. So basically, we pick up from the last episode, obviously, where, with Gavan Raya, after he's been captured by Infinity and his team and everything. And they're trying to interrogate him. For some reason, they put Patron and the other guy, I forget his name, because realistically, he's not that important. I'm not gonna lie. In charge of interrogating him. I don't understand why, other than to set it up that he's gonna easily get away. Because literally after they ask him, like, the first question that they do, they or he immediately, like, I think kicks them away and or does something like that, and then, like, transports away with his ninja arts and everything to where R.E.D and his team are in their control room, as well as their commander and everything. So yeah, I guess quick way of getting into the plot of this episode. I feel like they probably should have spent maybe another minute or so on that, but whatever. Or they should have had maybe a better setup where maybe Reiji and his team and their commander are the ones interrogating Raya. But yeah. So with that, he transports to the other room and gets his Immor gear back and his I forget what the fuck it's called, but the gun that lets him transform. And basically they get to a point where Reiji tells him he'll go back to his dimension or his universe with him and everything. And so Kunai, there we go. That's his name. Sorry, I haven't watched the show in like 5 weeks, so I don't remember. So anyways, yeah. So they Kunai transports back to his dimension or his universe with his ninja art and everything, and then Reiji and his team are not too far behind. But their commander tells them to take the Tornado with them, so they do. So they get to they get to Kunai's universe, and Reiji transports down to his Earth and everything. And basically, it's revealed as well, I think, after or maybe it's like, it might be before the actual opening, or the scene with Kunai getting away. There's a new character established, uh, Rurugi, I guess is her name. Okay. And she is the leader of this, what seems to be like a crime syndicate of some kind, and she's forcing Kunai's sister Hatsune, and yeah, her name is Hatsune for some reason, to what is the word? To make her a battle suit, basically. And one of the main reason that Kunai is making or is doing the things that she wants is because he wants at the very least Hatsune to be released from her servitude and everything. So yeah, I'm just gonna say this in terms of this character. The actress is clearly having fun playing the character, but unfortunately, this kind of comes out of nowhere, considering the very last episode, we had a completely different setup and everything, and no hints that this character existed. So, I feel like there should have been at least a little bit of setup with this, because, yeah, it just seems like, there was someone else who wanted Reiji to come back to their Earth and become part of their organization and everything. It's really odd that they decided to do this specifically, and I feel like we could have gotten a more maybe interesting plot or story or whatever out of it if they had done that. So yeah, so basically she commands ninjas with her own Amor gear, including the guy who was blackmailing Kunai from the last episode. Actually, I guess it kind of does make sense now that I think about it, that it could be her. At the same time, like, so basically, they capture Eiji in some handcuffs, and Kunai tries to use him to bargain for his sister's release from Rurugi's like servitude and everything. And she like doesn't necessarily back out on the deal, but what she does say is that she's not going to release Hatsune from her servitude, but what she is going to do, or what actually it is that she wants more than just Reiji to be transported to their Earth and everything, more interdimensional travelers across the multiverse and everything. And she says that she knows of at least 3. I think it's 3 more travelers. But yeah, and Reiji instantly thinks of Death Gavan and everything. So yeah, and basically she has this thing where she is I'm trying to think of what exactly she said. She said basically that there's the power at the center of the universe. It's really weird. I don't know necessarily if it's the translation that did a really poor job of what she, I think, actually was conveying, or if it was just the dialogue as written in Japanese, and thus the translation didn't do a great job of it. But like, they seem to kind of conflate with the fact that there are multiple universes versus the one that they're in. I don't know, unless if this energy like connects all of the universes and it's at the center of all of them. Maybe that's what they're setting up. I don't know. But we didn't get any real setup for this before, and not to say that it's out of nowhere. It's just a new thing, but yeah. And I'm just addressing it now. So then Reiji basically he convinces Kunai to betray Rurugi and basically what is the word? Embrace his fear and everything, which is something carrying on from the previous episode. And Kunai decides, fuck it, I'll go with your plan, and starts attacking Rurugi, to which she sicks her ninjas on him, and she, like I said, controls them with an Amor gear and everything, including the guy from the previous episode, who I guess was her messenger guy, who was as revealed later on in this episode, towards the end of it, a spy within their organization. So yeah, basically Kunai starts fighting. Reiji fights as well a little bit until he gets his Amor gear back. He calls to it, and it gets out of the pocket of the ninja who took it, as well as gets his is it a Gavarian laser or something like that? The gun back, so he can transform into his Gavan form. So they start fighting, or they fight a little bit more, but then when I think it's when Rurugi gets away or some shit, or no, she gets into her robot suit, which Hatsune established earlier on. If she rushes the development of it before it's complete, it'll break on her. So we get that. But before that, we get Kunai telling Reiji to go and save his sister, and so Reiji does with Agi and Date, I guess. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember names. But yeah, and they do that by crashing into the woman's lair that I guess is in space that they keep transporting between. I gotta say, in regards to the special effects that they use throughout this episode, they're not very good, and it would seem to me that the people doing the special effects, mainly like the green screen work and the CGI, did not get enough time to properly like render everything, which is a bit of a problem when it comes to CGI and green screen work, because there's been green screen work I've seen in recent Toku that's actually decent or at least passable, and then the whole framing device around the green screening, like they at the very least set up for it. Like it was Kamen Rider Zets, where there was an entire two-parter that took place basically in a dream world that also took place in a video game world. So you can accept the lower quality like CGI used for the backgrounds and the fact that they were on green screens and stuff for that. And on top of that, it didn't get in the way of like a decent story being told, in my opinion. And then they don't use a ton of CGI in that series. They mainly just do green screening and special effects over the stunts that they do. So this series overly using the CGI doesn't really help it. They very much use the CGI for the ship, and they have the ship in a CGI environment for when it's in its robot form, going into the woman's lair headquarters thing in space and crashing all through. It looks like it basically is just slightly higher quality, like 90s CGI Transformers, in terms of quality. That's at the very least how I see it. You can disagree if you want, but it's not very good. It's only like a hair above, as well, the CGI in Kamen Rider Heisei Generations Forever, and that was really bad CGI. So, yeah. I'm pretty sure I've complained about the CGI in one of the last few episodes of this podcast series, but yeah. So, they save Hatsune from where she's being kept, and she takes one look at Reiji's suit, and she's fascinated by it. But then they get back down to the Earth and in this universe, and which, by the way, Augie basically introduces a new I think form or way to control. I'm assuming Dornado, as well as the robot form of their main mech or their ship, and yeah, and then they also combine it into one and everything, and yeah, it looks it's okay. There's also a scene where we get Reiji on top of the head of Dornado, and it's reminiscent of the older Gavan stuff where the original Space Sheriff Gavan, he stood on top of his mech, his dragon mech. I'm not sure what the name of it is, sorry, because I haven't seen any of the original Space Sheriff Gavan, and I don't remember what it was called in Gokaiger vs. Gavan. By the way, rest in peace, Kenji Oba. I forgot about that, unfortunately, and just did not say it at the beginning of this. R.I.P. Kenji Oba. You started the Gavan legacy. You also helped out with the start of of Super Sentai in 2 different series. You helped out with that as a stunt performer and then an actor. So, yeah, rest in peace, my guy. But yeah, So they then, I was kind of hoping for a crossover at some point, maybe with the original Gavan in this series, but yeah, he did voice his support to, I believe, his daughter when the series started, so that's at least nice. But yeah, but unfortunately, I guess that wasn't in the cards because he was like in bad health for the last few years, so that sucks. But yeah, so there's no way he would have filmed something before he died. Not even a voice cameo. But yeah, so then the so they get back to Earth, and Kunai ends up I think I think he basically defeats all of the ninjas, and then takes on not Ruriko, that's Kamen Rider. I'm sorry, I'm looking on the wiki. Rurugi, very similar name. And she brings out her mech suit, or her robot suit, and her robot armor, I guess actually is what it is. And it ends up like burning out on her and breaking down. And Hatsune, when she gets there, she sees that, and she's like, I told you. Kavarian Trigger. That's the name of it. I'm just seeing it on the wiki page. But yeah, that's the name of their henshin device. I keep forgetting that because, yeah. So basically, it's a bit of a gloating moment. It is actually a nice, like, Chekhov's gun moment where they set that up early and then it comes back into play later on in the episode. It's a little bit telegraphed and a little bit obvious, but it's still decent for a Chekhov's gun. So yeah. So then, Kunai uses one of his ninja techniques to get rid of her robot suit, and then she is no longer able to fight, so he puts her in handcuffs. Meanwhile, the rest of the ninjas are taken care of by the people from his version of their organization. So yeah, and they basically kind of wrap that up pretty quickly. I would think an interesting thing to possibly do would be set up for maybe a future episode, the guy getting away and teaming up with someone else, or his true allegiance being to maybe Death Gavan or something else. Like, it's really weird when we're like close to halfway done with the series and we introduce the main bad guy of the series, but then the series kind of sticks to being mostly episodic with some reminders of the ongoing narrative. And it's just really odd the way that they're pacing everything. And I understand, like, the series only has, like, what, 20 to 25 episodes, and it's like they're very much doing this. I don't know. You would think that you would do more of a serialized ongoing narrative focus and everything once you introduce the main bad guy and everything, and maybe give just he doesn't have to necessarily be a big player in every episode, but maybe a reminder outside of like R.E.D thinking about him, maybe a scene towards the end of the episode or something where you keep the audience engaged in what's going on a lot more. Like, I understand this show is for kids, but like, if I were to compare it to something like the original Ben 10 series season 1, you had the ongoing narrative is basically Vilgax wants Ben's Omnitrix. He has been chasing it for however the fuck long, for years at that point. He wants it so he can raise an army. You get several episodes where you're reminded of Vilgax. He does stuff to try and get the Omnitrix, and he is seen as a big threat. And then you have the season finale where everything comes to a head and everything, and we see Vilgax and why he's so terrifying and everything. But we do get that, and on top of that, even though the original Ben 10 series is episodic. We get several episodes. I think like half the first season, or close to half the first season of Ben 10, is like dedicated to setting that shit up for Vilgax. And he is just a looming threat until the end of the season. We get that. Whereas here, Death Gavan, we're reminded of him, but he's not really seen as much of an imposing force or a threat, in my opinion. I don't necessarily know if that's like a popular opinion with this series, but it just seems like they're unfortunately very much underplaying what they could be playing up for the more interesting elements of this series. Like, I just really don't know why they're focusing on certain things rather than others, or just not focusing on certain things at all. But yeah, so we get the wrap up and everything, with everything being fine and dandy and everything, and it's just, yeah. Something else I haven't really commented on yet, I think, is the fact that the series doesn't use a theme song. I think it has a theme song because it plays. There's like, or maybe it's an insert song. I don't know. There is a song that plays over some of the action sequences, and then there's an ending credits song, but we don't have a theme song to open up every episode. And it's not necessarily like that it needs to have one or that that's bad or anything. It's just that it's a little weird in terms of the pacing in it when it comes to that stuff. You'd assume there'd be a theme song by now. Like Kamen Rider Zets, I don't think they played the theme song for the first 3 episodes. But yeah. And sometimes it's effective to not play a theme song for the first few episodes or so when you're just doing a 2-part opener, but like the fact that they don't have a theme song by this point is a little odd to me, but maybe it's a thing with the original Space Sheriff Gavan. I don't know. I haven't watched it, so maybe that didn't have a theme song either. I just don't know. But yeah. So, okay episode. I feel like they could have done stuff differently, if not better. I appreciate the fact that it feels like the villains seem to be having a good time playing their characters. It's just that, or the villains' actors seem to be having a good time playing their characters. It's just unfortunately that the characters themselves seem to be underwritten, and all of them seem to be written like they're the Joker. But yeah, just saying. But yeah, so enough of that. On to episode 12. Alright, so this episode just deals with us being back on Setsuna's world and him meeting Kunai and Kunai meeting him, obviously, because Kunai is tasked with, or maybe not even tasked with, but basically realizes the value in traversing the different universes to team up, or at least make allies with the different Gavans of the different universes after making friends with R.E.D and everything. So he ends up going to Setsuna's world to meet him, but he doesn't realize who the Gavan of that universe is for some reason. He was able to find R.E.D pretty quickly, but I guess not Setsuna. It's really weird. Meanwhile, Setsuna is on a mission in this episode to learn how to physically cry. Yeah. It's another one of those kinds of things that Data in Star Trek The Next Generation went through. Granted, it's not really a spoiler considering his entire arc throughout Star Trek The Next Generation is to become more human and to like be able to emote and everything because he was programmed without emotions and everything. And in one episode I specifically remember he well, a couple different episodes. He wants to learn how to sneeze, and then in another episode, he wants to learn how to, or he wants to be able to do a convincing laugh. So it's basically one of those types of things where he is starting to have emotions because he talks with his superior and she says about the fact that Reiji says that he must be exhibiting some emotions, otherwise the Amorgiers wouldn't be attracted to him, I guess, or just comfortable around him or something like that. And his his superior says that she says that I can't remember her name for the life of me, and I'm not going to look it up. She says, actually, let me look it up. She says that, or she hangs around him um, while he, uh, eh, whatever. Well, he, does a few different things to try and induce crying. The first one is chopping onions, which, yeah, I think he misunderstands or he just doesn't know what exactly about onions makes people cry. I've had to chop onions before. And what makes people cry is the onion juice as you're cutting into it, like getting into your eyes and irritating your eyes. Thus, it evokes that kind of physical reaction, and everything. He also tries sniffing the onions, but that doesn't work. Then he tries imitating Reiji when he yawns because he noticed that whenever Reiji yawns, or at least sometimes when he yawns, he I caused myself to yawn. He starts to cry a little bit. So he does that, but it doesn't do anything either. And then his superior. I need to know her name. Rui, there we go, Rui. So she tries to give him one of the most, like, I guess, potent or the strongest or whatever of the energy drinks that she drinks, or sodas or whatever the hell it is. I'm pretty sure it's an energy drink, but yeah. And I don't know necessarily if it's supposed to be like spicy or if it's just a lot at once, but it's supposed to induce uh crying in a lot of people, and unfortunately for Reiji or Setsuna, it doesn't do the trick. Basically, he, from what I understand from the dialogue, was that he was not built as a cyborg. He was not built with with the physical ability to cry. So yeah, he's kind of physically unable to, but he still wants to try and force it. But yeah, but Rui, she then suggests, rather than trying to induce a physical reaction, he tries to induce an emotional reaction to get himself to cry, as that's more human. So he signs up for an acting workshop class that is supposed to teach people how to be able to cry on command. So yeah, and that's where he meets Kunai. So yeah, because Kunai comes through the wall, and Reiji, or Setsuna, finds it a bit strange, but he's not gonna. He says he's not gonna judge him for it, I believe. So yeah, because Kunai also shows like a love for the wall for some reason. Weird, but yeah. So then Kunai then goes elsewhere in the building, and Reiji is there investigating something, and he gets the keys to the place from, I'm assuming, the manager of the building, but yeah, to do so. And yeah, so Setsuna does the acting workshop. The teacher has everybody in the class do some stretches. Then an exercise for an acting exercise for doing some dialogue while also trying to induce crying. Meanwhile, Reiji and Kunai go down into the basement level of the building, and they find some people that I guess were previous acting workshop customers, um, or patrons or whatever. Um, they are forced to cry, and their tears get uh, put into a it was basically a water jug that you see at like an office building, um, for a water fountain type thing, and yeah, and they start trying to break all of them out, but the metal on the cage that they're in is not budging at all. So yeah, it turns out the teacher from the acting workshop is the guy who's keeping them there, as he um, runs down to the basement level, but then Setsuna's in pursuit of him, follows him all the way down there, and that's where he meets Reiji and meets back up with Kunai. Um, so yeah, so the guy takes the water and gets out of there, but Kunai thankfully put an origami bird on him and makes another one with his ninja arts, and they track him that way because he cannot be tracked by the sensors on Reiji's ship. So yeah, and he got away too fast for them to follow normally. So yeah, but then Reiji tells both of them that they are Gavons when he says, "As Gavons, we need to stick together," or whatever. And yeah, and Kunai's kind of shocked to learn that Setsuna is or just surprised that Setsuna's the Gavon of that world. I don't understand why. Again, it's a little bit confusing because he was able to find Reiji pretty quickly, but I guess not Setsuna. It's weird. But yeah. So then they get to the guy's apartment house thing that he's in, and it turns out his wife is in there, and he is getting people's tears to be able to give to his wife because she is very sick. Because, as he explains to them, they come from another planet, and their people need a very specific type of like fresh water or purified water or whatever to continue living. And they came to Earth because he was told by people he knew that he could make a lot of money on Earth. And yeah, but then that happened, and he had to work fast to keep his wife healthy and everything. And it's just he even says at one point, what else was he supposed to do? It's like, you could just make a little bit of money and then go back the fuck home. What? Like, you could talk to maybe some police officers on Earth if because like the Gavan like police force agency is there. You could literally just talk to them. I'm sure they would be very much willing to help you get home or help out your wife or whatever. It's really fucking stupid because they end up doing whatever. They end up doing that after the shit, after the shit that happens next. So he has an Amor gear, which is how I think Setsuna was able to detect that something's not right about this guy. He induced the crying of the people in the class as well as the people he was keeping captive with the Amor gear, to get their tears and everything. And Setsuna, because he was unable to cry, did not succumb to the emotions of it, and basically just realized something was up with the guy. So yeah, so the guy creates a monster out of the jug of people's tears, and Reiji and Kunai start fighting it, while Setsuna tails the guy and basically tries to get him to surrender and give him his Amor gear. But the guy is not willing to do that, and the monster then interrupts, and Setsuna transforms into his Gavan form and starts fighting it. But then Reiji, because Reiji and Kunai were unable to beat it, at least by themselves, um, he takes the Gavarian laser gun that he has and shoots Setsuna's blades, charging them up with some energy, and Setsuna uses them as, I think, laser blades, something like that, and defeats the monster that way. So then he gets the guys a more gear, and or they get the guys a more gear, and they get his wife some help, and well, he's being arrested and everything, and then what else? And Setsuna thanks Reiji for all his help and everything, and yeah, that's basically how the episode goes. So again, I think this episode is actually pretty decent. It was weird though. Halfway through, I was starting to think that the the common like things within tokusatsu were maybe getting in the way of the actual story trying to be told, which I do think a lot of these episodes, unfortunately, or several of these episodes more so, get in the way of when they want to try and do more of an emotional type story, and then the trappings of tokusatsu unfortunately do interrupt it. But I felt like partway through, once Setsuna started fighting, it was a bit better, because he has a good line where he says the guy accuses him of I think not understanding the value in people crying, something like that. But then Setsuna says, "No, it's because I can't cry that I don't want to see, or I understand why people cry, that I don't want to see anybody shedding a tear." That line goes hard, I'm not gonna lie. And it's one of the reasons why I think Setsuna is probably my favorite Gavan of this series. Is just like, he's Data, but if he had a little bit of emotions and he was able to like more effectively explore his humanity and everything. Um and uh and all that. So yeah, it is dumbed down a little bit to a kid's level, but kid show, so it's whatever. And I feel like it's not. I don't feel like it's pandering to kids. I don't feel like it's doing that. I don't feel like it's talking down to kids either. So yeah, and I do kind of like the fact that like no one's making fun of Setsuna for wanting to know how to or be able to cry. It's just one of those things. One of those things about the human experience that he wants to be able to experience, and yeah, I don't really have much to say on that in regards to that, other than it's pretty good, and um, I do like that. So yeah, I like Setsuna's journey that they're going through. I yeah, Kunai is a little weird because of the kind of expanded characterization that they're giving him. He's just a little weird. I feel like maybe the audience is going to diagnose him maybe as being neurodivergent a little bit, just like they did, I think, Gavan Luminous. So yeah, um, I would not be surprised if there are sections of the audience that do that because of his like interest in the walls and shit like that. Kind of dumb, but yeah. Um, again, it's just another Setsuna episode, and I think they're doing pretty well with him thus far. Um, so yeah, I do think that they could easily just do more serialized elements to keep everything like uh going, and make sure that we remember Death Gavon is a thing, but At the same time, this episode, I'm not disappointed with it. I think it's actually decent. But yeah. So yeah, guys, on to episode 13. All right, so episode 13, and yeah, this part is recorded a few nights after I recorded the first two episodes, reactions, I guess, or reviews. So this one goes back to Gavan Luminous, and basically deals with her getting possessed by an energy being. This is literally how they explain it. At first, she thinks that she's a ghost. She might as well be, basically, but she's from another planet that only comes within range of Earth every so often, and she hopped on an Amorgear and came to Earth at the very least this time. She last came to Earth, as far as she can tell, a year prior, and she ends up possessing Kiki. She ends up possessing Kiki and goes to or gets a new outfit and pretty much drops the Amor gear and Kiki's police badge and or Gavan badge, whatever, and goes to a restaurant that she remembers to meet with a guy that she met the last time she was on Earth 100 years prior. When she doesn't meet the guy, and she thinks that the guy who's the waiter currently at the restaurant is or forgot about her and everything in the year since she's been gone. Her angry energy fuels the Amor gear, and it causes a new monster to pop out that can obviously multiply and starts wreaking a bit of havoc on the restaurant. And then and yeah, so after Kiki goes missing, we get Koto looking for her, but she runs into Kunai, Gavan Raya, and he is looking for a special herb that only grows apparently on Earth 9. And so Koto says that that Kiki knows basically everything about Earth, and that if they find her, then she can help him find whatever herb he's looking for. And so he agrees to help Koto find Kiki and everything. So yeah, so he uses his ninja arts to jump like the Hulk all over the city, pass through buildings and whatnot. And they have a little bit of a bonding thing where he asks her about Kiki, and then what is it? Koto basically says that Kiki gets hyper focused on stuff and has a lot of knowledge and all that shit. And I think a few other things. And Kunai says that Kiki reminds him of his sister. And so they have a bit of something on that. So, yeah. So they eventually get to where Kiki is. The entity that possessed her is named Reiko. And Reiko in control of Kiki's body, which we see sort of like a mind control center type thing to visualize how this is going. Basically, there's like an invisible force field behind Reiko as she's in the seat to literally pilot Kiki's body. And she's just keeping Kiki from being able to do that. So Koto gets there with Raya, and he transforms into his Gavan form and starts fighting the monsters. So then we see Reiji and his team detect the Amor gear energy on Kiki's Earth, So they dimension hop to there, and R.E.D transforms into his Gavan form and starts fighting with Kunai, and then they start, or he uses the tornado weapon that he has to like flamethrower some of them, but it's not really working. So they try to, they come up with a plan to defeat the monsters, and so Koto tells them that if they can break Kiki out of whatever, because she's enveloped in a layer of Amorgear energy that makes them unable to get to her, they can defeat the monsters. And basically, Koto tells them that if they show Kiki something that she's never seen before, that's a surefire way to break her out of whatever's going, or the energy around her. So, Kunai uses his ninja arts to grow into like 50-foot size to also fight one of the monsters that is also grown giants, which I think is interesting. They're not using a mech to fight in this. They're instead going Ultraman and having that kind of a thing. And so they and so he starts or he does that. Then Kiki sees that, is able to break free of Reiko's possession, basically, and get or regain control of her body. And so she breaks out of the like crystal that she's in, that's made of the Morgear energy, transforms into her Gavan form, and comes up with a plan to get rid of the monsters and everything. She tells Reiji if he can reverse the polarity, as it's translated in the subs that I downloaded, of the thing, then, or of his tornado cannon thing, it should be able to eat the monsters, because Koto actually wondered if the thing could eat the monsters, because she's hungry. So yeah, because the beginning thing with them is they were in their command center doing work, and Koto was hungry while Kiki was tired and everything. So Kiki went to go get Koto a special like galaxy curry, and which actually looked pretty good. I love curry. And was gonna give it to her, I think, so she could eat it, but before she got possessed and everything. So yeah. So then so Kunai, I think, manages to subdue the giant monster, if I remember correctly, while Reiji captures the smaller monsters. They bring them up into space on Reiji's ship and put them out into free-floating space, and then take them out with, I think, the giant Gavarian laser or whatever. So yeah. So then they go back to the restaurant. Kiki, before she regained control of her body, managed to deduce that the orbit between Earth and Reiko's planet, I don't really give two shits, honestly, to remember the names, or the name of her planet or her species. She, or in regards to the differences between how long a year is on her planet versus Earth, and how long it took the two planets to come back into alignment. She hasn't been away from Earth for a year, or at least for an Earth year. She has been away for 100 years. So yeah, so it turns out she wasn't she missed her reunion with Ryotaro, as his name is. And instead, the guy who was waiting on her at the restaurant is instead Ryotaro's, I think, great-grandson, is what he says. And he inherited the restaurant from his family and everything. I don't necessarily know if the translation in the subtitles that I saw makes any sense, because he said he inherited it from his great-grandfather, unless if his great-grandfather lived to be over 100 years long. Not improbable, but, or not impossible, just like highly improbable. But yeah. So then he looks in his great-grandfather's notebook and sees a note, I think, that he left Reiko, as well as a recipe for the drink that he made Reiko the last time she was on Earth. And it's a type of tea with a mint on it. And so she drinks it in Kiki's body. She's happy, and I guess goes home. Either goes home or disappears. So, yeah. Then we see Kunai. He finds out that the mint that that is in the tea is the herb that he was looking for, and it's actually pretty commonly grown on different Earths and everything. That's what Reiji says in reaction to that. And so they have a bit of that. Then after that, and they ask him why he wants it, and he says it's a thing within their rations on, I guess, in his dimension or universe, and if he basically uses that, and he can survive for a week without food. Which I just gotta say, I think there's better ways to be anorexic. But anyways, so, anyways, we get Koto and Kiki starting to have a bit of an argument because Koto has the curry that was at the site where Kiki disappeared and everything, and what was it? She still had it with her, and so Kiki tells her to eat it because she has only like half an hour left before it's going to expire. Meanwhile, Koto wants to save it for later, and they have a bit of an argument about that. And yeah, they also basically confirm in this episode that I think through Kunai that or maybe it's Reiko. It might be Reiko. Basically that, like, yeah, that Koto and Kiki are definitely basically they have feelings for one another and everything, and I think that's the writers like kind of mixing that in there. I've already said before that these are clearly space lesbians is what they want to do, and I don't really have any problems with it. They just need to go for it, I think. But yeah. So I think this episode was good. I think most episodes of Space Sheriff Gavan and Infinity that I've seen are good. It's just that there's certain things where the series just ultimately doesn't meet the mark and ultimately feels a bit mid. But I did like this one. It's an interesting take on, I guess, I'm assuming it's probably an old Japanese story, or even just an old story type in general, where the ghost of a dead woman comes back, possesses an alive woman to go meet a guy that she knew, and turns out that he's not alive anymore or anything. But yeah, so we have that. I don't mind the twist that they put on it, her being an energy alien instead of a ghost and everything. And I don't mind a story like this at all. Kind of that unfinished business angle. So, yeah. A few notes, though. One, I really don't understand how Reiko didn't, or how she thought Ryotaro was, I think it's Ren was his name, that he introduces himself as, the guy's great-great-grandson, or just great-grandson. I don't know if they're supposed to be played by the same actor. I didn't really pick up that they were played by the same actor. I assume maybe they were, but like Ryotaro had, I think, a mustache. It might have been a goatee combo, that like Japanese kind of like Fu Manchu kind of goatee, and I think he also had different hair and everything, like a different hairstyle and everything. Um, so I just really don't understand that. I do like when Kiki figures out why things aren't as Reiko remembers and why Ryotaro isn't the waiter at the restaurant. She has a few context clues as to that. She puts it together by remembering something Reiko said, where she said that the city, which is this universe's version of Tokyo, um, looks different than the last time that she was there. And then her like crash out at who she thinks is Ryotaro, not remembering her, and all that shit. I do like Kiki being able to put those things together pretty quickly. I think we could have used maybe one or two more context clues and to clue the audience in more, because I think just the one before Reiko's crash out definitely, I don't think was enough to clue the audience in on this mystery angle that they were going for with that. Um, yeah, I wonder if in the script and maybe when they shot the episode, maybe there's some deleted scenes that were trimmed for time, um, of stuff like that. I do think that the episode could have used a few more context clues like that. I do like some of the filmmaking. I like the fact that they did the giant uh, Gavan Raya fighting the giant monster on the miniature set of the city. That was actually really cool. And everything. Oh yeah, one other note. I was surprised Koto didn't become Gavan Luminous. I honestly really kind of think that she should have for at least a second. She could have easily helped fight the monsters and everything for like a second before telling them about how to get Kiki to break through the energy crystal thing that she's in. Just my thought. She had Kiki's Amor gear, and I'm assuming she could have summoned the Gavarian trigger. So, yeah. I don't really think that she would have gotten in trouble with, like, their superiors at command, at, like, HQ or whatever or for doing that. It was an emergency, and I think she would have been fine. And I doubt that Kiki would have been mad at her for it. She would have understood, I think. Um, she even says at one point that if she was Gavin or Gavan, that she could help. And I literally saw her, or when she said that, I'm just like, you have the Amor gear. And I bet you can summon the Gavarian trigger. Just fucking do it for a second. You know? Then she could just, when Kiki's back, she could just take the Amor gear out, transform back to normal, and let Kiki use it. It's like, I don't know. She just makes things. She's made things a little bit harder for no reason. It's just really dumb to me. Um. So yeah. What else? I like how Reiji doesn't come into the story until like halfway through, so we get a good proper like introduction and middle with Kiki, Koto, and Raya. I like how Raya interacts with Koto. I like how they just get along. They don't they're not at each other's throats. It's a very different energy to Koto with Reiji and everything. Um, the fact that uh, yeah, the fact that Kunai is definitely a different energy to Reiji, I definitely like. So yeah, what else? I think that that's about it. And I think that the pacing for this episode is decent. And everything. I do like that Kunai is definitely more forthcoming with information, because Koto asks why he's interested in meeting Kiki, I think, or interested in helping Koto get or find Kiki, and he says that like there's an upcoming like event that they need more Gavans to be on their side for. Um, so yeah, I do like that. I don't really think I have much else to say on this. I will say though that the outfit that Reiko picks out is kind of kind of gaudy. The like red dress with the like, it's not a bucket hat, but it's a similar type of hat, and the like the red hoop earrings. It's a bit gaudy. I'm not gonna lie, and I don't necessarily know if it really works on Kiki's actress in terms of the look. I will say though, I like the filmmaking when Reiko drinks the tea. They for a second switch actresses, so it's Reiko's actress in the outfit. I think it works more on her. I think it also works in a sense that it looks like an older outfit that you would maybe see in like the 1920s, um, like the flapper era. It kind of reminds me of that, um, mixed with like an old lady's dress maybe. Um, I don't know, like something maybe the Queen of England would wear. It's somewhere in that, and I think it works on that level, but it's still kind of gaudy. Um, and I just don't think it fits Kiki's actress. Reiko's actress is a little bit older than Kiki's actress. She looks like she's maybe in her 30s, so I think it works better on her. She looks a little older, whereas Kiki's actress I think is either late teenage years or early 20s. So like, yeah, it doesn't really work. But yeah, so I do like the filmmaking there, and I do like that or she gets closer, and she's not really an evil person. She's just someone who is affected by the Amorgiers. I like Reiji's line too, where he's like, "We didn't even get to arrest the perp," and it's like, well, yeah, couldn't have arrested her anyways, dude. She's an energy being, and it's also established that like her planet, since it's made of the same energy that she is, uh, you can't really see it. So yeah, and it seems like Reiko, she specifically cannot be seen by most people. Kiki was the first person that that could see her in a very long time. So yeah, and most people I think yeah, just couldn't see her, and or only saw the Nega Imorgir that was there. So yeah, so enough of my yapping. So I want to get on to the next episode. So we're going to episode 14. Okay, what the fuck did I just watch? So this episode, I had this thought immediately, like starting to watch it. This episode genuinely feels like the second part of a two-parter we never got. Like, I okay, for on the one hand, that's disappointing. I would have loved to have seen whatever the fuck happened before this shit. I think that we could have easily gotten an episode where Death Gavan like is the main villain, and he's stirring some shit in Setsuna's dimension, and we have a bit more context on stuff with Kunai and his Earth and everything, and shit that happened with Death Gavan there. Um, because I feel like there's some backstory and other shit missing here. On the other hand, I can understand wanting to dive right into the action and just get on with it, but like we get little glimpses and flashes of I think what they want the main overarching story to be every so often with Death Gavan. But the thing about it is just like they don't seem to want to do a lot of the legwork to keep the audience engaged with that overarching story, and then so every like what 3 to 4 episodes or so we get little glimpses and flashes of it through these episodes, and it's really odd how they're choosing to spend the time with these characters and the overarching story and everything, especially when we only have 20 to 25 episodes, maybe 26 at the most, depending on like how far the series is going to go. The rumor's like 23, I think, but like which would make sense, but um I don't really know. It seems like the producers and the writers have and the showrunners have like ideas of what they want to do, and all of them are trying to compromise with one another in terms of how they're doing everything, and it's not really leading to the best results. Okay, so I think I've maybe said this before. The individual episodes I think that don't deal with the overarching plot, I think are mostly fine. I like the characters enough that I like seeing them interact with one another. I like seeing their personalities bounce off each other. I like a lot of the stories that they tell. I like some of the character development they've been giving the characters. The overarching plot, though, with Death Gavan, I think is unfortunately this series' Achilles' heel, where it's not integrated really well, and I don't really know why it's not integrated really well. Um, and these are writers from Toei, and like, if I can compare this to anything, I think I've compared this to this show before. Kamen Rider Zets. Kamen Rider Zets has a very big overarching story. However, for the first half of the series, episodes 1 to 24, most of those episodes were focused on like day-to-day monster of the week type stories and everything, but it also developed the story that they wanted to tell slowly throughout those episodes until it came to a head, and then the second half of the series, they're just they just hit go. They hit the ground running with it for the second half, and I really don't understand why these writers can't do something similar. Now, here's the thing: these are writers and showrunners coming from Super Sentai, and I believe the showrunners are the ones who did Boon Boonger a few years ago. So it doesn't make too much sense to me how they can't format this in a way that would make more sense. And I don't really buy that it's the reduced episode count either. They have roughly half the number of episodes that they would have gotten for a normal Super Sentai season, because Toei and Bandai want to be experimental with this shit, because they don't want to lose as much money on the gimmicks and everything, and for the merchandise and everything, as they were with Super Sentai. That's why they wanted to do a reboot of Space Sheriff Gavan. That's why they wanted to do the Project Red stuff and everything. They wanted to bring back an old property that, even though it's had new entries in more recent years, in the last 15 years, ever since the Gokaiger versus Gavan movie, every so often they've continually brought the space sheriffs back, particularly the first three, and then given them new generation movies and everything, or next generation movies and whatever. Um, it just I just, like, the show constantly fights between wanting to do an overarching story and just wanting to be a slice of life mixed with monster of the week, mixed with episodic storytelling, with the characters interacting with one another, going to different dimensions, and being cool with one another and dealing with the problems that arise there. Um, and I would think normally you would want to maybe do that for maybe the first, 5 to 10 episodes. Then you can introduce the overarching story. Because, like, if we're dealing with roughly 23 to 25 episodes, maybe, if we're dividing this up into stuff that makes sense in terms of the storytelling, you would want episodes, the first, like 5, 6 episodes be your main introduction to the main characters and everything. The next bit to maybe have some episodes where they interact more to get a good feel of their personalities, how they bounce off each other, how they're developed, or giving them early character development, all that stuff. Then you can have stuff introduced for an overarching plot that makes up the next 2/3 of the series, and then deal with that. Maybe not every episode. You don't have to have every episode be part of a serialized narrative. But if you want the serialized narrative, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too in regards to how they want to do the storytelling here. And it's just like, um, I'm very intrigued with the Death Gavan stuff, but I am not really understanding why they're formatting the show the way they are and writing it the way they are. I do apologize if there are people who are very much enjoying how Gavan Infinity is doing stuff thus far. The problem, however, is just like the two are at odds with one another in regards to the two different styles of writing a show like this, and they don't know how to mix them well. It just sucks. And so yeah, like I just said a few minutes ago, this episode feels like the second part of a two-parter we never got. We never got a first part of this. And it feels like maybe that was how this was written as well, that there was like maybe at least an outline for a script for a first part of this story, then this is the second part. I honestly think that what they should have done was a two-parter. Maybe they could have had an hour-long block on whatever the fuck channel this airs on in Japan, where they have an hour-long block of this stuff, and yeah, or better yet, have the Death Gavan stuff in a first-parter. Maybe have Reiji and his crew be unable to traverse dimensions for a bit because maybe their technology, their D-jump technology is on the fritz or sabotaged or something else, which would be fine and would be a good explanation for it. And then, yeah, just have it like that, and then have Death Gavan and Kunai be at odds with one another for that. Establish that Setsuna and uh, his people detect Death Gavan and have all that shit. So they go and confront that stuff for the beginning of this, and then finally you get them fixing the D-dump technology. So they go to Setsuna's dimension and all that stuff for this part and everything. I don't even really necessarily know what you would do for that. That's something to come up with later, but it's one of those things where I'm just like, we got an episode in the first, I think, 5-6 episodes of this series where an alternate dimension Gavan was a fucking CGI ant that, where in a universe where bugs are sentient and smart enough to live alongside humans and can somehow communicate with them by talking. We got that, but we couldn't get an extra episode for what is obviously, or what should obviously be, a two-part story, where you delve more into the backstory of Death Gavan and Reiji and Reiji's old master or teacher. You just the building blocks are there. They just didn't want to build the fucking puzzle or build the fucking like thing. It confuses the fuck out of me as to how this episode is. So to get to the episode itself, we get Kunai fighting off against Death Gavan in Setsuna's universe. Setsuna and his superior, I forget her name, Rui? Is it Rui? They, along with their other people, go to confront them because they detect their negative, or his negative energy and everything. They recognize him as Death Gavan because Reiji warned them about him, and they try and fight him for a second, with their the regular guns or hired guns, but then or the regular soldiers, but they get possessed by Death Gavan's Amor gear, and Then Setsuna transforms into his Gavan form and starts fighting. Then Reiji and his crew detect Death Gavan in Setsuna's dimension, make the D jump, and they go to that. Then Reiji goes down to their Earth, and Rui is picked up by Date and Agi, and goes aboard their ship and watches the fight from up there. So Death Gavan subdues Reiji, Kunai, and Setsuna. He offers Reiji the chance to find out more about where he gets his dimension hopping powers from, because he tells him the name of it. I don't give a shit about the name, so I don't really remember it, but it's long and it's very Japanese sounding. So yeah, he tells him about that. He which gets him intrigued enough to want to find out more, apparently, and then he offers him the chance to go with him to learn more about everything. He was bathed in some sort of energy that gives him the powers to transcend universes, basically, and apparently he's beyond just the regular, I guess, mortal coil at this point because of it. And Death Gavan's powers are fueled also by his rage, because he notices Reiji's rage, and all that, and yeah. So Reiji hops on board Death Gavan's ship, and they go into the Makyu dimension. Setsuna and Kunai get on board the other ship, and they head into the Makyu dimension and follow them. Meanwhile, and when they get to, I guess, a base that Death Gavan was at or some shit, he traps Reiji with a gravity well from one of the Amor gears, and transforms his ship into its robot form and starts fighting them. They transform their ship into its mech form. Setsuna takes control of it after a second, and they start fighting Death Gavan's robot ship, and they're on the back foot for a good amount of time until their commander sends in all of the auxiliary mechs, or auxiliary, well, mechs, but yeah, I don't know. Other than Zords, I don't know, to help them out, and they end up weakening Death Gavan's robot enough to the point where when they combine with Tornado and use its ability, they basically destroy the ship, especially when Reiji breaks free of the gravity well by using his Amor Gear powers of his Amor Gear and his original teachers, and yeah, just breaks it and subdues Death Gavan enough to where the robot and ship are destroyed by the Tornado laser. So yeah. So then Death Gavan opens up a portal to another dimension and sends them both through it. And yeah, so then they get back to, I think, Setsuna's dimension, and the commander and them detect where they went, which is Kiki and Koto's Earth. And yeah, so they make the D jump because they have enough energy to get there. And then yeah, so then we see Reiji and Death Gavan crash down and fight a bit until they're both like shocked with enough of the like stunning energy that Reiji, Setsuna, and Kunai were stunned with earlier, or subdued with earlier, more so, I guess, because if it's not much of a stun thing. But yeah, and Kiki and Koto detect the energy and go to where they are and watch what happens. Reiji basically wants to arrest Death Gavan and basically get him to talk and everything. and even says that basically he's just not interested in finding out much more about him because he doesn't really care too much about it, or doesn't care as much about it as he does, as Death Gavan does. So then, before he can really do anything, Kunai comes in with his sword and tries to kill Death Gavan, but R.E.D stops him. And during that little thing, Death Gavan manages to escape by calling on energy from, I forget what it's called, but yeah, somewhere like an alternate dimension sort of energy thing, and gets out of there. R.E.D tells Kunai to leave Death Gavan to him. And Kunai basically argued that Death Gavan should be killed because of the fact that, like, to protect Earth Prime, basically, is what he says. And, so it's kind of like a pragmatic sort of thing. So Date basically says that, Death Gavan has the death penalty in Kunai's dimension. And, yeah. And then Kiki and Koto are wondering what the fuck is going on, so they're just like, hey, can you inform us of what's going on, please? We don't know what the hell's going on. And the episode ends there. A few things with the production of this episode in terms of footage used. It's really weird for most of the transformations in this episode when they do the Jochuk to their Gavan forms. We don't have, like, footage shot on the locations that they're at or the sets or whatever of most of the transformations for the Gavans. The only one that we do is where R.E.D transforms when he goes with Death Gavan. That's about it. What they do here is something that they haven't done in the series, and they switch over to the green screen footage of the characters doing the Chochok and getting transformed into their suits and everything, from when the narrator voice comes in and explains the Jochok process, which I have not mentioned for a while, but, like, they do it for some reason every time they reintroduce a Gavan, and after it's been, like, several episodes, and I don't understand as to why. You would think that it would maybe be once for their introduction and maybe another time, but, like, I don't know why they keep doing it, and it eats up too much time, and it doesn't matter. Because, like, if you've watched earlier episodes, you get it. It doesn't, I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to sell the toys more? I don't know. It's really dumb. But yeah, doing that, switching over to the, like, black void of nothingness where the Jochok happens, isn't a thing this series has done. That's more of a Super Sentai thing, where, they have the actors standing in front of a green or blue screen and just having them in a dark void of nothingness when they do the transformation, or a different background or whatever. So yeah, that's more of a Super Sentai thing, which I get the Gavan is meant to replace Sentai, at least for now. But they've been doing more what Kamen Rider has been doing, at least with Zets, is for Zets, whenever Baku or one of the other Kamen Riders in the series transform into their rider forms, they do it within shot. They do their best to match up the regular actors and their suit actors in costume, walking and everything, so they can do a seamless transition and everything, or standing in a certain way to do a seamless transition after they applied, like, the special effects and everything to do the transformation switch. It's just really odd, and I do wonder if maybe it was to save a little bit of time in the editing process, just to reuse the footage and have the sound effects people work on the sound effects and have the actors dub over the footage as needed. It was just really odd to me. I think the other one was, there was actually two. The other one was Setsuna in the ship when he transformed into his Gavan form to take over with fighting Death Gavan. And it's kind of weird that he knows how to do that, how he knows how to pilot the thing, but whatever, I guess. Um, but yeah. Um, so like I was saying earlier in this section, I I am just baffled at the decision to just jump right into this. Um, if only because it's been several episodes since we've seen Death Gavan, and it feels like I said, it feels like this is the second part of a two-part story that we never got, and I really do not understand like the time or the way that they're spending their time with producing this series in terms of the writing, in terms of the pacing of the overarching narrative, and whatever. It just does not make much sense to me. And I don't know. Um, my thing is, I would kind of rather them just do an episodic series until, like, maybe the last, like, quarter of the series, where they then introduce the, Death Gavan stuff, and, maybe having a bit of foreshadowing beforehand, and because they have done some foreshadowing anyways, keeping those bits in, but then having all the Death Gavan stuff be introduced in the last quarter of the series, where they can dedicate all the time to it, and they can have more of a serialized structure to the storytelling, where every episode from then on out is like dedicated towards the Death Gavan plot. I don't really know. It breaks my brain with how, like, they are doing the storytelling of this series. I don't understand whatsoever why they're making the choices that they are, and it's really dumb. It's really dumb. I can't explain it any other way. Like, I'm sure the kids in Japan that are watching this series as it comes out day to day, they're not, or week to week, they're not really thinking about this stuff because, for one, they're kids. They don't have the greatest media analysis skills, and I know because I used to be a kid. And I was watching TV shows like this, and even though I was paying attention to various things, I wasn't really thinking about overarching narratives if there was one. Unless if, like, a series specifically pointed it out. But yeah, there's just a reason why I don't think that the series is really taking off as well as it could, because there are so many different things you could change in terms of the writing and structure of the series that would make it so much better. Like I said, I like the cast. I like their interactions. I like the day-to-day plots. And everything. It just, however, feels like when they want to introduce a more overarching narrative that comes up every so often, it hits you like a ton of bricks because it changes the show into something completely different. And I am intrigued with what they are trying to do with the Death Gavan plot. It's just that it means nothing to the rest of the series when it's, like, sectioned off like this. It's just really, really odd. And I think in a previous, like, part of this, I compared it to the original Ben 10 series, which the first season had an overarching narrative with Vilgax being a looming threat and everything, and coming in at the end and everything. That series was able to do it in 13 episodes, and also have the day-to-day, like, episodic plots. I just think that this series could have easily have a very similar thing and it not be jarring. So, yeah. So, yeah, on to episode 15. Okay. So, episode 15. Rather than actually picking up where the last episode left off and getting into some actually interesting story stuff, this episode instead chooses to be a filler episode that I guess, furthers the story of Patron and his friend, who I think it's Wachi or some shit. And Patron wants to be able to take a test to become the next Gavan, I guess. Even though, at least in their universe, there's only supposed to be one, and I guess in some of the other universes as well, there's only one per universe. To which I don't know how he thinks he can become Gavan, and like why he thinks he would be able to be. I don't know. So this show is suffering from the same problems that Power Rangers Super Mega Force suffered from, but I guess to a worse degree. And what I mean is, if you've never seen Power Rangers Super Mega Force, that show had only 20 episodes. This show's getting, like 23 to 25 or so, and a movie. Literally, I'm trying to think. Sorry, I'm a bit tired. But literally, when it comes to this shit, Super Mega Force barely focused on its story and its characters, its main characters at least, and trying to tell an interesting narrative and everything. It's one of the pitfalls and downfalls of that series. Not to mention, it's also a shit adaptation of an actually really good Sentai series, but I'll leave that for a future video that I've already written and just need to actually record and edit together. But Space Sheriff Gavan is suffering from the same problem, only to a worse degree. Power Rangers Super Mega Force, at the very least, was mostly focused on the Rangers fighting the main bad guys, and the main bad guys still being a looming presence over the series. This mainly has to do with the fact that they mainly followed the same formula, to a degree, that Gokaiger had, which was the same formula. The Gokaigers facing off mainly against the main bad guys of the series and the threats that they have towards Earth and their commanders and everything, and all the monsters of the week that come from that. This series has too much of a kind of ADHD problem where the more interesting aspects of it are not being focused on for some reason, in lieu of filler slice of life type episodes in a series that doesn't have more than 20 to 25 episodes and a movie to tell its story. And it makes no sense as to why. So this episode, like I said, it mainly deals with Patron wanting to become a Gavan and his friend wanting to help him achieve that goal. I guess them wanting to replace R.E.D in his role as Gavan. Doesn't deal with Death Gavan. You would think that R.E.D would want to track down Death Gavan and search for him that way. You'd think that they would at least have maybe a cold open or a scene or something like that establishing that they're trying to track him down and everything. And maybe also dealing with the fallout of what happened in the last episode when R.E.D told Kunai to leave Death Gavan to him and not to kill him and everything.
and them coming to a head there and having their main differences with that, and that putting a bit of a stain, I guess, on their newfound friendship. And on top of that, the upcoming conflict that is supposed to be happening with or involving all the Gavans of the various universes that we've seen thus far, and probably will see more of in the future. So the episode deals with a bomber who has set a bomb and has a remote that they're going to use at 3 o'clock. They've warned the police about it and everything. Where they're going to blow up a tech building, or where he's going to blow up a tech building, because even though he passed school and everything, and I think got a degree in that shit, instead, or he's instead wanting to blow up the building because he couldn't pass their hiring tests. That is what the guy says specifically. This episode maybe should have been earlier on in the series, before we established the Death Gavan stuff, and or before the last episode, because it's such a tonal whiplash to go from a very important episode to a slice of life episode, and it feels like nothing in terms of continuity carries on from the previous episode to this one to any degree. And the characters don't really act any, the main characters don't really act any differently from how they have been in the past. I just, this episode just, it's fine in a vacuum, and I don't hate it entirely. I just do not understand why they're focusing on this shit. Patron and his friend are douchebags who I did not care for at the beginning of the series. I feel like they were slowly maybe getting a little bit of character development, more so them just changing their personalities slightly so that they're more agreeable and likable. And they start to form a bit of a friendship with the main characters. But in this, the two of them start acting kind of like douchebags again. So if that was meant as character development, not character development well spent. If you're just going to disregard it in a future episode slightly. But yeah. And this episode also deals with Patron getting over a thing in regards to him believing that to be a Gavan, you need to, or to be able to become one, he needs to take all the credit, or be able to take all the credit for finding the bomber and his friend finding or just finding the bomb and stopping it before it can go off, or it has a chance to go off. Which I guess is fine for a bit of that character development, but I don't know. This episode also nerfs R.E.D, I think, just to make Patron's part more substantial. So R.E.D starts fighting the monster that spawns from the guy's Amorgear, and he is definitely playing on the defensive, and he isn't going all out, specifically because he wants to use one of his Amorgears, because it absorbed the bomb and its remote control or remote detonator, to make sure that it doesn't, I guess, blow up and take out the building with it. So yeah. And it's just really weird. We've seen R.E.D take on more threatening monsters than this, and I don't understand why he's like easily more easily subdued by this monster compared to any of the others that he's fought thus far. And it's really dumb. Then on top of that, the guy that they catch who was the bomber. First of all, the makeup's not really good. It's literally just like blue, maybe face paint on the guy's cheeks coming down from like the bridge of his nose with blue, like, I don't know, fake jewels, sapphires, whatever, just glued on his face for the few days he was filming these scenes. So it's really not even their best work. They didn't really put a ton of effort into certain things. I will say though, the one thing I think they did put the most effort into is Patron's facial expressions. They cut away with the camera several times to change out, I think, his faceplate to put in a different facial expression, which you can definitely tell. Like, this is probably the lowest budget episode thus far, or at the very least, it's showing. And so they do that rather than having, I don't know, CGI or a transition effect to make his face change seamlessly on, or where it is on his body. So yeah. Also, I feel really bad for the suit actor for Patron, because Patron specifically, he should know his limitations, but he's a robot that has kind of like shorter, kind of stumpier legs, and he can't move that fast, and because his legs are like really bulky and all that shit. And all that. And meanwhile, R.E.D can move faster and everything, even though Patron says he's smarter and everything. But I think R.E.D proves that like that's not really the most you need to become a Gavan and everything. Not that Patron can't still become a Gavan just based on his like brains and what he's learned, but like it's just really, really fucking dumb. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah. So I don't really think I have anything too positive to say about this episode. I don't know. Like I said, in a vacuum, this episode is fine. And I think if this came before the very last episode, it would be fine. I am so baffled at the decisions the showrunners and the producers are making with this series. Like, it definitely feels like the series should have more episodes than it ultimately will. And we already know it's not going to have. Yeah, it's really stupid, you know. Like I said, decent episode in a vacuum. Don't care for how it's like placed in this series. Yeah, when you only have like 20 some episodes and you've only devoted like a very small number of them towards which should be the overarching story and premise and whatever of this season or show or whatever, that's a problem. And yeah, I don't really know. It's like I said, this is the same problem kind of that Power Rangers Super Megaforce ran into, and Power Rangers Megaforce, where because of the arbitrary 20 episode per season rule, they had to truncate the seasons to 20 episodes and compress the adaptations of Go Sager and Go Kaiger into a fucking mess of 2 seasons. It is just so bad. The only thing, though, is that this is original stuff. This is all original stuff. So, yeah, and I guess I understand that they needed to do maybe a lower budget episode where they could shoot more on location and everything. There is some CGI for when a building blows up and then reverses and implodes in upon itself, like the top half of it does. And some CGI for the monster absorbing the bomb and its remote. But otherwise, this episode is pretty low budget, other than the location work, which required them to shoot in different parts of Tokyo than I think they otherwise would have for a show like this. To which I can't imagine that that's any more expensive than the green screening or CGI work that they've done in other episodes. But this has a very minimal use of CGI, so you can tell it's supposed to be a budget-saving episode. You would think maybe they would want to shoot a bottle episode, maybe. And I think that also translates to why the action kind of feels really lethargic as well in this episode, because, like, maybe they couldn't bring in their best people for the fight scene or something to choreograph it better, or just at least make it seem like R.E.D wasn't nerfed. But yeah, just fucking wow with this episode. I don't know. They could, if they wanted to do a more low budget episode, they easily could have done a bottle episode where R.E.D, Date, and Agi are on their ship. They're charged by their commander to search for Death Gavan. You spend most, if not all, the episode on their ship, where maybe we get backstory, or maybe we get them actually looking into stuff, or we get the characters interacting for an episode in one or two locations that are either sets or maybe outside. And you write an episode around that premise. And you save money on that, because you don't have to shoot anything on more than just the set that you already have, or sets that you already have. You can write interesting dialogue, backstory, conflict, whatever, into the episode that you need. You continue the main story that you're doing, and you save money. Like, I do not understand it. Like, I know that they want to, like, give the kids at home that the series is aimed at, the very little kids that the series is aimed at, the ability to, like, connect with the Buddy Roid, since we haven't seen him in a bunch of episodes. But, like, this just wasn't it, man. Like, hell, they could have even had these characters in the episode for a little bit, and maybe that inspires R.E.D to think outside the box on something, or he thinks of something that he didn't before, or just something like that. I don't know. Just, it easily could have been better than it was, and I don't understand why it wasn't. So yeah. So I think I've laid out all my problems with this episode, and these last several episodes, or last couple at the very least. But yeah, this episode's time slot time could have easily been given to a first part of the two-parter that I think we should have gotten for the last episode. But yeah. So yeah, guys. So I don't really have too much else to say on this shit. That's it for episodes 11 through 15. So yeah. So links in the description, all my shit. Subscribe if you want, and I'll see you guys in the next one.